Hi, I'm Steve. You can call me Steve. I'm not a huge Disney fan, but when I was a kid, someone gave me a book that had a highly compressed version of the story of Dumbo, the flying elephant. It told how he was given a magic feather that allowed him to fly, but it turned out that his flight abilities came from his comically oversized ears all along. I was pretty young at the time and didn't fully understand what was going on, but looking back, it's clear that while the feather had no intrinsic magic, Dumbo's belief in it allowed him to conquer his doubt and realize his potential. I'm starting to think I must have been pretty slow on the uptake as a kid because there were a lot of things I didn't understand. Anyway, Dumbo's feather is an example of a placebo. When drugs are tested in clinical trials, there is always a control group of people who don't receive the drug, so the effects of the treatment can be compared to a baseline that's been through all the same conditions. This is essential in scientific experiments in general. You always want a sample that's identical to the one you're experimenting on, but hasn't been subjected to the thing you're testing. In clinical trials, simply administering a drug can have effects independent of the actual drug. To control for this, you get a second group of people and give them sugar pills or saline solution or anything that's biochemically inert and doesn't contain the drug. When I'm doing a chemistry experiment, I don't need to worry about how my chemicals think or feel about the proceedings. However, when humans are involved, their expectations and psychology can have unexpected effects. By all rights, the group that isn't getting the drug should show no response. But that's not always the case. In many cases, members of the placebo group will show improvements in whatever condition the drug is supposed to treat, especially if it's for pain management. However, this is only true if they don't know they're in the placebo group. If they're aware they're being fed sugar pills, the effect goes away. Almost. A tiny fraction will still show some effect, but the vast majority of people won't respond to a placebo if they know it's a placebo. Why believing that a placebo is a real drug will cause someone to respond as if they had taken the drug isn't fully understood. It could be purely psychological. Thinking you're being given a painkiller is enough to make your brain ignore incoming pain signals. However, further studies have found that there is a physiological response. Something is actually happening, and it's not all in your head, although saying all in your head is vastly oversimplifying what's actually going on. If you give somebody a tasty drink that contains an ingredient that causes a change in your body, like an immune response, and then you tell that person what you're doing, and then you give them only the tasty drink, you can measure an immune response happening even though there's nothing there that should cause it. The brain has been conditioned to respond to the tasty drink through a placebo effect. Quantifying a placebo response is difficult because there are a lot of other factors in the way, ranging from improper data interpretation to patients giving answers that they think the researchers want to hear, to people just getting better on their own. Sometimes the ingredients of the placebo aren't as inert as they're supposed to be, and people have a reaction to that. As our understanding has grown, previous studies describing placebo effects have been re-examined, and it turns out the effects weren't as strong as first thought. Studies involving humans are imprecise. Because they involve people with autonomous free will, we can't control every aspect of the experimental conditions they see like we can for animals or plants or chemicals. As a result, there are lots of fuzzy areas and vague results that are open to interpretation. That doesn't mean that these trials are bad or useless, just that they have inherent limitations. I should also stress that a placebo is not a substitute for proper treatment. Mostly it's good for improving how a patient feels, but not treating the underlying condition. Improving a patient's outlook and quality of life are important and can increase positive outcomes, but you can't treat a broken leg or an infection this way. You need to use real medicine for those. Most alternative therapies like acupuncture are nothing more than ornate delivery systems for placebos, not real medicine. That's the placebo effect. It's a real phenomenon that can improve a patient's well-being, but is not a substitute for proper medical care. At best, it can be used to trick the brain into feeling better, which can aid in recovery and shouldn't be dismissed. However, this is a complementary method to proper treatment and should not be used as primary care.